خواهم گزارش باشه که هم تریستاش در سول دیوار باید پس کشتن. Our Majlis is on tomorrow, 23rd of July, Sunday, at 1 Westmore Drive, Heat 1, Victoria. Start at 1:30 with Hadith and Kisa, 1:45 with Source Islam, and 2 o'clock with lecture with Dr. Shabbir Kirmani, gents only. So whoever can join this Majlis, please join in large numbers at 1 Westmore Drive, Heat 1, Victoria. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. मैं दावत देता हूँ डॉक्टर शबीर किरमानी साहब को मुंबर पर तशरीफ लाए बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु फातिहा
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل البيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأوحينا إلى أم موسى أن أرضعي صدق الله العلي العظيم زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman here in Melbourne or across the globe wherever you're hearing my voice, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give wahi or inspiration on anyone other than a Nabi? We've been discussing the future of our community in light of Karbala. Our topic is the eternal renaissance of the Husseini movement, Karbala, and the future of our community. And one of the things that we've been discussing is through the struggle of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his struggle in 61 AH. And every year we remind ourselves and the world about the movement of Imam al-Hussein. How is it that we can use this movement in order to revive the memory of Sayyid al-Shuhada, but at the same time solve some of the problems, some of the challenges, and some of the new things that we're facing in our world. And so, looking at the past experiences of other communities and how they have fared, can we learn about what is the future of our community in Australia, in America, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, and throughout Europe, and throughout Asia, and throughout the world, in terms of What does it look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, in 100 years? Will there be people here, more people, less people? Who knows? But some things that we need to learn and look at the patterns to understand this. And in order for you and I to understand this, we need to not only discuss the challenges, we also need to start discussing solutions. And in that model, there's some things that I want to discuss with you today in terms of how do we first understand what is the challenge, and number two, what is some potential solutions to these challenges, and then how can we learn about the answers to those solutions through the Quran, the Ahlul Bayt, and the teachings therein. Today I want to begin building on our journey and our vision of how do we reach Kamal as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a broader ummah in order to make this world a better place for you, myself, and whoever exists. Muslim, non-Muslim, does not matter. That is, how is it that I can use the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to become the first, the best version of myself, and then also help others along the way. In order to do so, we need to understand what the Quran, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Ahlul Bayt wanted from us and wanted from the system of a community and a society. To this end, I want to invite you to think about how can we solve some of these problems. But before we get there, I need to elaborate on what happens sometimes when you just let things go as they are and you think that things will be okay. We have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, we are supposed to do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but before that, we're also supposed to tie our camel, so to speak. You tie your camel and then you do dua. Same way Allah told Musa, take the medicine and do dua. Similarly, there is an element of dua and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tawakkul ala Allah, but that comes after you do as much as you can in your ability to try to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So you do the struggle in the way of trying to solve the problem. Now, allow me to explain. You may think that, I'm living here or you're living here, and in light of what we mentioned in the previous nights about Ta'aruf Ba'd al-Hijrah, one of the things that you need to reflect on is, where are we going? So I'll give you an example. Throughout America, throughout Canada, throughout Australia and the world, there is julus, tazia, commemorations of Sayyidul Shuhada, especially in this time of the year. And alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful thing. And this is something that is very positive. But I want you to come with me to another place. And the place is called Trinidad and Tobago. This is in the Caribbean. This is not too far. It's between North America and South America. It's not too far from where I live. And there, every year, if you go there till this day, they have something called the Hussein Day Festival. You can check this on your own. So they have something called the Hussein Day Festival. And when they come together, everyone comes in that town, in that society in Trinidad, and they come and they have a festival. And in that festival, they will, for example, if you go there, you will see what we call, for example, tazia. The tazia that we would have for the commemoration. And people come here today, when they gather, they will come together, they will have these large tazia type creations, and then they will also come together and dance, and they will also come together and drink alcohol. And if you ask them, what's the history of this, where did this come from? Many people will say, we're not sure, but we commemorate it year after year. And believe me, I have people who I know who have witnessed this. When they went in the history, they found out that actually, how is it possible that on one side you have tazia, on the other side you have dancing and drinking? And they found out that hundreds of years ago, when the British brought over some people from India to this part of the world on plantations into Trinidad and Tobago, some of these people were followers of Ahlul Bayt. And they used to commemorate Ashura. So what was called Ashura became known as Hussein Day, and eventually became known as Hussein Day. But nobody remembered where it came from and where it originated. To the point that what was originally one thing, the commemoration of Ashra and Sayyidul Shuhada, eventually became a festival where people drink and dance. This is within a matter of about 150 years. So what I'm telling you is that you may think that perhaps things will go the same way that they've always gone. Maybe, maybe not. But what I'm saying is, in terms of our responsibility and our struggle, we have some work to do. You may find that in terms of, there were certain generations, if you go to Europe, you will find in certain Central European countries, there are whole towns of Sadat. Sayyids, from the line of Sayyid al-Shuhada and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein in particular. Sayyids, Shi'as, but they don't know anything about Islam. Nothing. To the point that they may have a name, but they've lost. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm not telling this to demoralize you, remember. I'm trying to encourage you to think and realize and reflect. Every single challenge is actually an opportunity. Without challenges, we don't grow. I was speaking to some of my brothers and my friends, remember, without Fir'aun, there's no Musa. Without Namrud, there's no Ibrahim. Without Yazid, there's no Hussein. That is, you need someone on the other side who is there. That's the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, that does not mean that they're good. That's not that meaning. The meaning is that Allah knows how to keep the system alive, and Allah knows that in every era and every time there will be some people who are doing good and there are some people who are not doing good. That's why in Surah Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us and told us, this is how we do dua. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. That go the path, send us, guide us on the path of those whom you have blessed, not on the path of those who have gone astray. So a theme that you'll find in the Quran is this. So in order to look at this, don't look at this and say, oh, I can't do anything about this. Remember, the ability that Allah has given you, Allah, when He made you and made I, myself and yourself, He said, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ الْخَالِقِينَ. Allah said, glory be to the best of creators. You are the best of Allah's creation. But the reality of the matter is, there is so much ability you have within you, which oftentimes people that just exist, we don't feel the whole dynamics. Benjamin Franklin, if you go to America, we have a $100 bill, you'll find this person on the $100 bill in America. Benjamin Franklin said a very interesting line. He said that most people, they die at 25 and they are buried at 75. The idea being that the life that they had at 25, they're just existing, breathing maybe, but maybe not. What did Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam say on his way to Karbala? He said, one of the statements he said, that religion, deen is more complicated, a complete way of life. Deen is on the lips of people. And when push comes to shove, when times get difficult, قَلَّتْ دَيَّانُونَ. The people of deen are very little, the people of faith are very little, the people of belief are very little. But that is not to discourage you, that is to say, the same principles of Surah Al-Kahf, truth is with the minority, there's things that you don't know, and also travel intellectually and physically so that you are able to learn more. Now come with me here. What are some potential solutions to this? This is what I want to cover in the next few moments that we are here together. Number one, what is the potential solution of some of the challenges that we are facing in our communities globally? What are some framework that we can use in order to try to solve some of these problems in light of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt? Number one. Number two, what is the integral nature of the family structure in light of the future of our community and what Islam says? Number three, what is the particular position of parents in that regard? And what does Islam say about it? And how does that reconcile with the world as we know it? But what does this also have to do with what philosophers, scientists, historians said, and how can that help us become the best version of ourselves? And finally, how is it that the people who are in the path and the companions of Imam al-Hussein exemplified what it meant to have a community, a family, and an entire movement together on this basis? How did they implement that? This is what we'll discuss tonight, inshallah. Wherever you are, here in Melbourne or across the globe, Sana salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's a request to please move forward. There's a space limitation in the back. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. May Allah bless you and your families, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran al-Majid wal Furqan al-Hamid, He tells us about this. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Allah says, O you who believe, For those of you who are in the afternoon majlis today, I mentioned, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, this is a Madani verse. It is revealed in Medina. The people of Iman, Allah is addressing them. So Allah says, O you who believe, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Protect yourselves and your family from the hellfire. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. So there's a responsibility to protect yourself and your family in this regard. Now, one of the challenges that we're facing globally throughout the world is this. There's this dynamic of the blame game going on. Have you heard of the blame game? So for example, there's an issue or challenges that people are facing. Young people are facing challenges of the world. Maybe there's issues of relationships, drugs, alcohol, whatever the challenges may be, wherever they are. And so these challenges emerge. And so everyone's saying, oh, this is all the responsibility of the parents. The parents are to blame. And then the parents, you ask the parents, they say, this is actually the Maulanas. The Maulanas are not doing their job. You have to blame the Maulanas. So if you've ever seen tennis, have you seen tennis or badminton? You're moving it and hitting the shuttlecock or the ball back and forth, back and forth. But in this back and forth, there's no solution to the problem. Tonight, I want to lay a foundation and a framework to try to start to solve this problem at an individual, family, and community level, so we can actually be progressive about these things and not say that, this is the problem and, just we'll deal with it. Whatever is the issue, we can't do anything about it. That's not the vision of Islam. That if you look at every prophet that Allah mentioned in the Quran and every imam, they always did something. Now the way they did something is often different. Sometimes they spoke out. Sometimes they were silent. And even that silence had a purpose. And sometimes they wrote. And sometimes they commissioned someone else to solve the problem behind the scenes. You'll remember Ali bin Yaqteen during the time of the 7th Imam. So there are examples of the Imams using a multi-pronged approach to solve the problems. In this, I want to present to you a 4-square model of solving this problem. And that means the first foundational layer is the family element. The family is followed by another element. If you picture a square, you can visualize what I'm saying. The first element is the family. The second element of the square is the madrasa system, Sunday school, weekend school, Saturday school. The third element of the square is the mimbar itself. And the fourth element on top is what's called the company that you keep. Company, the companions that you keep. All 4 of these must work together in order to give rise to a strong next generation. As the old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. Today, in our modern world, there's not even the family structure to raise the child, let alone a village. And what's really important for us is to realize that all 4 of these elements need to work together to progress our community forward. That's why when it comes to family, when it comes to madrasa, when it comes to the mimbar, when it comes to the company that you keep, they all need to complement one another and support one another. Oftentimes, I've seen, sometimes you have the best of family structure, the best of madrasa systems, sometimes even the best of mimbar majalis, but sometimes the company, the people you surround yourself with, friends, maybe not the best friends, the people who maybe they don't take you down the right path, they will spill water over all of the hard work of the others. So it's very important to make sure these are all working together. Now, to build this framework, the first element is where I want to start tonight, and that is, if we want to look at the future of our community and prevent the things that I mentioned 2 nights ago about cremation and not being able to even bury the father, or what I mentioned about the Husay Day festival, we need to start acting. And the way we start acting is in terms of the akhlaq of the Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah, the Prophet, was asked, why? Why was he sent? He said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect people's noble character. The makarim al-akhlaq. Allow me to explain. There's 2 types of akhlaq, ethics, in Islam. In Islam, there is this concept of mahasin al-akhlaq and makarim al-akhlaq. Those are 2 different things. Mahasin al-akhlaq is if you do good to me, I do good back to you. So for example, you give me a gift, I give you a gift back. So for example, if you are nice to me, I'm nice back to you. But if you're not good to me and you don't give me a gift and you're not nice to me, I'm not nice back to you. It's whatever. That's mahasin al-akhlaq. Makarim al-akhlaq is different. Makarim al-akhlaq is, it does not matter how you treat me. You treat me well or bad, doesn't matter. I will still treat you well. The example, this is Rasulullah with the lady who used to throw rubbish at him. The lady was throwing trash at Rasulullah, rubbish at Rasulullah, when she didn't know anything. It was the early days of Islam, and one day she didn't throw the garbage. And then Rasulullah asked, why? What happened today? Why didn't this lady throw the rubbish, the garbage? He said, she's not well. She's ill. So Rasulullah said, I want to go see her. So she went to see her. So he went to see her. When he went to see her, she said, who is it? He says, it's, the gentleman you throw rubbish at every day. He said, have you come to take revenge on me now, in this state, when I'm vulnerable, when I'm sick, when I'm ill? He said, no. I've come to see, do you need something? Are you in need of anything? Do you need some help? Do you need something? You see, when that happened, she melted. And she didn't realize who he really was. The same thing happened when a Shami, a person from Damashq, came to Medina and he met Imam Hassan. When he heard that this is Hassan ibn Ali, he began to curse him and say all these foul things. When he began to say these bad things to Imam Hassan, all the companions by Imam Hassan got very upset. They were about to hurt him. He said, stop, or let him finish. At that point in time, when he finished, Imam Hassan said, look, you look like you're a foreigner. You look like you're not from here. If you need clothing, we'll give you clothing. If you need a place to stay, we'll give you a place to stay. If you need food, we'll give you a place to eat. And when he did this, it melted him. Why? Why didn't Imam Hassan react to the person treating him that way? You'll find that Imam knew something. He was aware of something. And what was he aware of? That this person who was saying these bad things to Imam Hassan was a victim of the propaganda of Banu Umayyah and Muawiyah. So they had said that Hassan is like this, Hassan is like that, Hassan is like that. So if Imam Hassan acted in a hostile, aggressive way, then everything that Muawiyah and Banu Umayyah had said, it would check the box and it said exactly as they said it, exactly that's how he is. But the Imam said, no, my akhlaq and who I am is in my hands. Meaning, if they said this about me, I must show who I am and my akhlaq is. So this is the concept of makarim al-akhlaq and mahasin al-akhlaq. Now, stay here. Rasulullah came to remove jahiliyyah. Rasulullah came to perfect people's akhlaq. If you went to England in maybe 150 years ago, there was this caste or category of the rulers, the monarchs, the kings, the queens, the duchess and duchesses and all this. And under them, they were the commoners, the people who were there. But above them, there was an elite class. They were called the gentleman class, the gentlemen. Now gentlemen, how did they differentiate someone who was a gentleman? One of the ways they used was property or land, but another one, which was very important, was morals, manners, etiquette. If you had etiquette, you were considered part of this class. If you didn't have etiquette, adab, then you were not considered part of this class. Now stay with me here on all of these things. Now let's come to the main crux of what I've been trying to lay the foundation for. What is Islam's vision of family? You see, in our world, some things you need to understand. What does the Quran say about family? What do the Ahlul Bayt say about family? What do they say about our sense of family? And how is it that we can take the best of both worlds? I remember one of my professors was telling me, he had gone to Japan. Japan, not too far from here, quite a distance from where I am. And so my engineering professor, he said this very interesting dynamic that you notice there that you don't notice in a place like America. Now you have to know two things. There are different cultures in the world. Some are individualistic, some are more communal, community-based. And you'll find China historically was considered more community-based, India was considered more community-based, and the West, the modern West, became more individual-based. Both have pros and cons. Both have positives and negatives. For example, in an individualistic society, one of the positives is, for example, if you're at work and you have a work meeting, or you have a school gathering or something like that, and you say, I eat halal, or I eat vegan, or I eat this, they'll accommodate you. In a community-based society, they'll say, we have a biryani, you want biryani, take it. You don't want, go. So the idea is, you get whatever everyone else has, you have as well. So if I have particular dietary restrictions, they may not be accommodated. On the flip side, Community has many very big benefits that individualistic societies are now suffering from. One is the concept of individualistic societies. One of the big challenges that we're facing is loneliness. I don't know about here, but I know about in America, in the last 50 years, loneliness, tanhai, has doubled, 100% increase. That is, people are very alone. And that's a huge problem because we were not meant to be living alone. Rasulullah even told people, don't go and sit in the middle of nowhere as like a monk. That's not what Islam is about. Islam is about living in the Maidan, living in the center and the heart of society amongst people. And Islam is to struggle in that way. So now come to this element. What is Islam's vision? So my professor mentioned, there's a word I want you to understand. It's called ethnocentricity. Fancy word, simple concept. I'll explain. So he said, my professor said, look, I went to Japan. And when I went to Japan, I checked into my room. I went to the hotel. When I checked into the hotel, I put my bags down. And when I put my bags down, I left the room for a few minutes to go downstairs and then just, relax for a second and then come back upstairs. He said, when I came back upstairs, I opened the door, I found that my things were not there. Like, I just got here, someone stole my bags, took my bag, what happened? He was shocked. He said, I went downstairs, I went to the lobby and I spoke to the front desk. I said, hey, I just checked in. I went upstairs, I put my bags down. I went outside for some fresh air. I went back to the room, my bags aren't there. Oh, they said, yes. This room, oh, right. He said, what happened was, right when we gave you your room, and right after that, just a few minutes later, we gave you a room that was bigger than the one that you paid for, but we didn't realize that right behind you, there was a family that came, and you are an individual. Behind you, there was a family, father, son, and children. And they needed a bigger room. They didn't have the space. We needed to give them a bigger room. And so what we did was, we moved you to another room, and we gave you still a good room, which is better than the one that you paid for, just in order to accommodate this family so they can have a space where their family can sleep. And you know what? We took your bags and we moved them for you. And we didn't even ask for a tip. So you can say thank you to us. He was shocked. Because in America and other parts of the world similar to here, that is called a violation of your privacy. That's a violation of your individuality. That's a violation of your property. You can't touch someone's things without their permission. But he realized that the culture there was different compared to the culture he was coming from. So who's right? Well, you cannot say, who's right? They'll say they're right, I'll say I'm right. Who's right? And this is where this comes in, that we sometimes think the way we are is the right way. Not necessarily. Maybe someone else has something good. In our world, there are definitions of what is family that are being told to you. Sometimes they'll say, family is just, the immediate, children and parents, for example. Sometimes they have other definitions. Sometimes they say, grandparents are not part of the equation. Grandparents, they're separate. Sometimes they say, grandchildren, separate. I was reading a study that came across that the average amount of time that grandchildren in America see their grandparents is about 4 hours a year, per year. And in this, you realize that this is why some of the aspects of society we're suffering on. So now, based on this, I want to give you some understanding of why family is so important and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Another request, please come forward. There's a request, if you can please come forward. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I think in the middle, just. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakallah. Now, Allahumma salli ala. So now, come back to this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something, and this is where I'm building up here, and I'm really getting to the crux here. He says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. This is an ayah of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And Allah says what? I command unto you, do not associate anyone with me. Allah is speaking. Do not associate anyone with me. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and do good to your parents. The Mufassirin and the exegetes and the people who explain the verse of the Quran, they say the style of this verse is very interesting. The style of how Allah structured this verse is very interesting. That why is Allah saying at one time, I command you, do not associate anyone with me. And in the same line He's saying, and do good to your parents. The ulama say it is as if Allah is saying, I am not allowing you to worship anyone except me. But if I allowed you to worship anyone, it would be your parents. That is the maqam and the manzilat and the position of parents in light of Islam. Now you may say, oh, that's the Quran, that's Islam, that's not our vision necessarily. Now stay with me here. If you want whatever you want in life, based on the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, know that the key to them is your parents. The dua of them goes very far. But you may say that this is just, Islam. Allow me to explain this so you understand how important this dynamic is. So we are clear about this categorically. So allow me to explain. Abraham Lincoln is considered one of the most successful presidents in the history of America. And he was the president during the Civil War in America, between the North and the South. And he had a line where he says, not from a religious perspective or anything, he's saying, but look, as a president, he said, I always remembered the prayers of my mother. They clung on to me, they stuck on to me, they hung on to me wherever I went. This is a president who was saying that the prayers of his mother had an impact on his life, number one. Number two, when it comes to the philosophers of the past, Socrates, Aflatun, Arastu, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Aristotle, when they came to this issue, they said, for example, a man must repay the first, the biggest, and the most important debt that they owe. Debt, qarz, the biggest loan, debt that they owe. And that is to the parents. And he must go hungry before they go hungry himself. He must go without clothes before they go without clothes. He must make sure that their needs are met before his own. Now, I have not even gone to Islam yet. I'm just talking about if someone at your work, school, or otherwise says, why should I have respect for my parents, or why should I have consideration for my parents? You can start here from the secular perspective. I have not even come to Islam yet, or any religion for that matter. So this is a commonality that all of them had. In terms of Confucianism, you'll even find there was a notion of filial piety, that is being good to your parents. And the way that they would remember I'm talking about the Confucius region of China and the likes, right? In the Asia Pacific. When the parents died or passed away, they would have mourning for 3 years. Not 3 hours, not 3 days. 3 years. Why? Because they said that when you forget your parents, don't forget that you are part of a chain and a line, and you are one link in that line, and your parents remind you of where you came from, and all what is the importance of that journey, and they give rise to. Now, this is the philosophy. Let's go to the science. There's someone by the name of Darwin, Charles Darwin. He wrote his theory of evolution that he read on and think about this. But there's one moment that historians don't talk about. And there was one moment that he was about to drain his whole theory into the river. And he said, because I cannot explain this one aspect, and it destroys my whole theory. Theory was, look, the survival of the fittest. The strong survive. So he could not understand one thing. Why do people behave altruistically? Altruistically means when you do good to someone without expecting something in return. So he said, why do parents treat their children with love, respect, and admiration when they don't need to? It's against the concept of survival of the fittest. But there was no one to tell Darwin that Allah put that in the fitrah of the parents, based on the nurturing element of raising these children. Now come back to this. I'm not even at Islam yet. Hinduism. Hinduism has this notion of the respect of parents. So you can tell people, this is not something that just Muslims believe, the concept of family and the respect of parents, for example. In the mythology of the southern part of India, you will find there is a myth in terms of Ganesha and his brother. So this is a god in the Hindu mythology. This is not our Aqidah, I'm just telling you other people. So you can remind even your friends, colleagues, or people that you have at work and school to help them understand why this is important. So Ganesha is one individual, and then his older brother or stronger brother is bigger, stronger, and more able. So they have a competition. You know how siblings have competitions? They say, look, let's have a race. Let's go around the world and see who can do it faster. Because these are supposed to be gods or demigods. And so they are saying that, let's have a race. So the big one, the strong one says, very well, let's do it. So they count 3, 2, 1. And in this myth, or the mythology, this big brother, the strong brother, he goes around the earth once, twice, 3 times. Then, eventually, when he gets back to earth, he's like, I won. When he gets back to earth, he sees his other brother, Ganesha, who's standing there, and he has the 2 parents. Their parents are standing there. And he says, look, I won. You were sitting here and standing here, and in that time, I went around the world 3 times. I won. I'm the winner. And Ganesha looks at him and says, no, I won. He said, you won? What do you mean? I went and I traveled over the world 3 times. And you're still here. What do you mean you won? He said, yes, I won. He said, you know, when you went to go around the earth 1 time and 2 times and 3 times, I stood here and I just walked around my parents 3 times. He said, this is the statement, he said, you went around the world. I went around my world. What's more important? And the idea is of perspective, the same principle that in our world, some people say, this is important. But in other cultures and societies, maybe something else is important. For example, is it important to you to make everyone else in the world happy? Or maybe it's more important for you to keep those people in your life who are important and keep them happy and blessed. Now stay with me. Musa alayhi salam has a conversation with Allah, Kalimullah. I'm coming now to this. Now keep in mind, before we even get to Islam, Judaism, Musa is respected by Islam, but also the Jewish and the Christian community, they say Musa is a great prophet. So in Judaism, Musa brings the 10 commandments. When he brings the 10 commandments, one of the commandments of the 10 commandments is honor thy parents. In Judaism, in the Old Bible, the Hebrew Testament, the Old Testament, it says honor thy parents. When this was revealed, Banu Israel came and they said, look, Musa, we have a question. Can you ask your God for clarification on this issue? He said, sure. What's the question? They said the question we have is, God sent this and said, honor thy parents. Thou shalt not kill. Honor thy parents. It says honor thy parents. But where we live, the person in charge is Fir'aun, the Pharaoh. What if Pharaoh says one thing and our parents say something else? Who should we listen to? Should we still honor thy parents? Should we still honor our parents? Or should we listen to Fir'aun instead? And so they thought maybe God will change the view. So then the Bible says that God said, honor thy parents. Musa goes to the mount, speaks to God, and God says, honor thy parents without whom you would not exist. So he said, you are talking about Fir'aun, you wouldn't exist without your parents. Because of them you are alive. So what of Pharaoh are you talking about? So now this same Musa, in Islam, we have narrations that say this. This Musa had a conversation with Allah, and he said, Ya Allah, I want to see who is my neighbor in Jannah. Who will be with me in paradise? Who will be my neighbor in Jannah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Musa, very well, you are my Ulul Azm prophet, you are my Sahib Rasala prophet, you are one of my highest prophets. I will show you and tell you who is your neighbor in Jannah. So Allah said to him, go to this location and you'll find your answer. So Musa got from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the location. In our words, he put the GPS address in, followed the track, and he ended up going to this location. Now when he gets there, the address that Allah gave him is a bazaar, a marketplace. So he gets to the bazaar, and he's like, this is where my neighbor is? Is it a mistake? Allah doesn't make mistakes, or maybe I put a mistake, so he gets there. But he has trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he goes further, and in the bazaar he goes and follows the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until he gets to a shop. In fact, a butcher shop, a meat shop, where someone is there and they're cutting and selling meat. Lamb, or you take your pig. And the person, so Musa is thinking, there's something here. I don't get this yet. What's going on? Allah knows, but I'll stay patient. So at that point in time, this notion and this concept happens. And so he's noticing how this shopkeeper and this butcher is, and sometimes he's not dealing with people in the best ways, and sometimes he's, saying, what do you want? Here, take this, take this. But even his akhlaq is not the best. So he's thinking, this can't be it. What's going on here? There must be some other wisdom. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I'll come back to this momentarily, but one thing that I want to mention is, and this is very important for the future of our community, I was in Turkey. I don't know if any of you have been to Turkey, and you get the tour there in Turkey, and you ask them, for example, one of the things that they write in the masjid, and some of them, it'll have a sign, and you'll ask them, what does this sign say? And I asked, many of you may have asked as well, and they said, oh, this is a statement of hikmah, wisdom that our elders had, and that we write it here, and the ulama had. And what is it? It says, if you do not hear children crying in the masjid, be very afraid for the future of your community. Meaning what? If they're not coming at that age, what do you think they'll come at 15, 20, 25? Meaning what? We sometimes are saying, in terms of mothers, in terms of fathers, in terms of people bringing their children, sometimes those people and some noise and disruption happens. We are not using the akhlaq of the Ahlul Bayt to deal with them. Yeah, you see, the problem may be my problem, because I'm the speaker, I have to deal with that. But in terms of that, we should be very accommodating. Why? Because if that mother or that father cannot bring their child here to the University of Imam Hussein, to the Darsgah of Imam Hussein, to the Danishgah of Imam Hussein, where can they take them? This is that institution that gives tarbiyah to the insan. So we should make sure that door is open for everyone and everyone. Now, accommodations are important. Discipline is important. Places are important, and there should be accommodations made. But at the same time, we should not make it that because of us, anyone feels uncomfortable. I remember I was in London once, and I went to one of the Hussainiyas, and the Imam Barga was totally different. Because their philosophy was different. When I noticed the philosophy was different, I asked them, you walked in and you smelt oud everywhere. It smelled amazing. The environment looked perfect. The akhlaq and the adab was, all the people were volunteering were wearing suits, for example. Black, but all suits. It was in the Iraqi community. And I said, what is this? This is very different than what I'm used to. I have not seen a community like this. 2,000 people in the hall, plus. And I met the coordinator, and he said that, look, we have a philosophy. And our philosophy is that we are the khuddam of Imam Hussein. We are the servants of Imam Hussein. And every single person who walks in is a guest of Imam Hussein. And so we treat each individual as we would expect that the Imam would want us to treat the guest of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That's a very different way of thinking about the dynamics of the equation. Sometimes when you see followers of Ahlul Bayt, you think that sometimes you don't even know that we are followers of Ahlul Bayt. You think that one is, Harun or Fir'aun or Shaddad or Qarun or Haman. This is sometimes the animosity that we have sometimes for our own people. Believe me, don't say anything bad about your community, especially not in front of your kids. Because trust me, I'm the one who has to deal with it. They say, Mama, Baba, I've always been saying this community is a problem. So why do I want to marry someone in this community and bring a problem in my house? I'll go marry someone outside. It's much better, so I don't have to have a headache. The problem is, we need to be mindful of this. Now, come back here. Musa is in the bazaar. When Musa is in the bazaar, he's at the butcher shop and he's wondering what's going on. He says this doesn't make sense. But as the sun begins to set and the day begins to decline, at that moment in time, he notices the shops are closing. When the shops are closing, this butcher also begins to close his shop. When he begins to close his shop, he tells the people, good, I'm done for the day, you can leave, closes his shop, and when he closes his store, according to the narration, Musa says, I didn't get my answer yet, I need to follow him. And so what he ends up doing is, he follows on this journey, this butcher. Because that's the address Allah gave. Allah doesn't make mistakes. So Allah said, this is the location. So he said, but there's a hikmah, there's a wisdom here, so what's going to happen? So he follows him. And sometimes you get this feeling that someone's following you. So he got this feeling, the butcher himself, and he turned around. When he turned around, he saw Musa there. Musa was a few steps behind, but he saw him. At that time, akhlaq was different. Adab was different. So Musa said, will you have a guest for the evening? Can I be your guest tonight? For dinner or come to your house? You know, obviously if someone asks to be your guest, if you don't know them, you want to be careful. But there was a concept of guests and mehmandari and all these things that we don't have anymore. Today, someone wants to be your guest, you're like, I don't have time. Or like, do you think it's a problem? But there was a philosophy of even guests and the adab of guests, for example. Anyways, when this happened, he said, will you have a guest in your house tonight? He said, yes, I will accept you as my guest. So Musa went on the dinner. Now, he doesn't know who Musa is. He's just like this, a random person. He's never met him before. He doesn't know about it. So he says, okay, yes, you can come with me. So when they get to the house, this individual, the butcher, says to Musa, you have a seat, my guest. Sit down here. I'll be back with you momentarily. Now Musa sits down. When Musa sits down, he's looking at this whole scene and he's observing. When he's observing this, he notices the butcher, he goes into the kitchen and he begins to make some type of soup or stew. And when he makes the soup or stew, he eventually takes out 3 bowls. Musa is thinking, 3 bowls? There's 2 of us here, what's going on? And as this happens, he takes one of the bowls and he fills it with the soup and the stew. Now Musa is watching all of this, observing. When he fills it, he then takes some pieces of bread, he breaks the pieces of bread, and he begins to put it into the cup with the soup. Then Musa's watching. Now Musa's wondering, is he going to come join me? Is he going to feed me? Is he going to eat? What's going to happen? At that point in time, the narration says, Musa was still seated there. This butcher went up some stairs. There was a loft in his house. Not a full 2nd story, but an elevated place that he took some stairs in, and he went up them. When he went up the stairs, he then picked up something that looked like a very big basket. You know, basket? You know, baskets can be small, but some baskets historically they've been very big. So this is a big basket. So he picked up this big basket, and Musa cannot see what's inside or if there's something inside. He doesn't know. He's saying that he just saw the basket from the outside. When he saw the basket from the outside, he's observing all of this and wondering what's going on here. And eventually, he brought this basket downward. The butcher brings this big basket downward. Musa's watching this scene. When he brings the basket down, he puts it down, and he takes the cup of soup that he had taken with the pieces of bread, and he begins to take it, and he begins to take his hand, and he picks up a piece of bread. And he begins to extend it towards the basket. Now Musa can't see if there's anything inside the basket, what's there, what's going on. He's just observing, and he only sees the outside. He only sees the butcher, he only sees the cup, he only sees the bread and it being extended. At that point in time, he then notices, this whole time Musa notices that the bread is being passed into the basket. So he's wondering, maybe there's some cats or some animals or something he had. What could it be? So he's observing. At that point in time, eventually when the cup of soup and the bread gets finished, he puts it to the side, and there's a moment where he then moves his ear. The butcher moves his ear closer to the basket. And then he brings it back and he smiles and laughs. And then he takes the basket and he goes back up the loft and the stairs and puts the basket down. Then he comes back down. When he comes back down, he takes the other 2 bowls that were on the kitchen counter, as we would call it, and he fills them with soup, and he comes to his guest, Musa, who he still doesn't know. He says, here, my guest, here is a bowl of soup for you. This is for me. My apologies for the delay. I am now here in your company. Let us eat. Musa could care less about the food. So he said, look, fine, sure, no, thank you, very much, whatever. This is great, but tell me this. What did I just see? He said, what do you mean? What did you just see? He said, what was this scenario, this scene that I just saw? What was this? He said, what do you mean? He said, you went to the kitchen, you took out 3 bowls, made the soup, you made 3 bowls. You took 1 bowl, you put bread in it and soup in it. And then eventually I saw you go to the loft area, take this big basket, bring it down. And then you're extending this bread towards it. And then there's a moment where you smile. And eventually you put this basket back and you come back and then you give this bowl to me. And what just happened? Oh, he said, yeah, oh, this is my daily routine. Every day I come home and do this. He said, what do you do? He said, I have a responsibility. He said, every single day I come home, I make some food, and in this basket, I bring this basket down, and I feed the inhabitant of this basket, who lives in the basket. He says, in this basket lives my elderly mother, who cannot move anymore. So every day, while I'm at work, I remember her, I think about her, and when I come home, I make sure that the first thing that I do is I bring her down and I feed her with my own hands. Musa is still observing. He wants the answer to his question that Allah gave. At that point in time, he says, okay, you feed your mother with your own hands every day after work when you get home? He said, yes. He said, but tell me, there was one moment that I want you to tell me about that I don't understand. He said, what was that? He said, at the end, towards the end, I noticed that you took your ear and you took your face and you moved it and extended it closer to the basket, into the basket, and then you moved your head away and you moved your face away, and then eventually you smiled or laughed. And then you took the basket and you put her back, you put your mother back. Can you please explain what I just saw? Musa's thinking, maybe this is the answer to his question. He said, oh, this is a joke that me and my mother have between us. That she gives me a joke every single day, after I do this. He said, what's the joke? What did she say? Now to the son it was a joke, to the mother it was not. He said, every single time I do this, my mother gives me a dua. She gives me a prayer. Musa says, what's the prayer? Every time I do this, she says, my son, may Allah make you Musa's neighbor in Jannah. Musa got his answer. Musa looked at him and he said, Subhanallah. He said, oh man, know that I am Musa, Kalimullah. And this joke that you are saying is a joke that your mother says is not a joke. This is the actual prayer of hers that has been answered, that Allah has told me that you are my neighbor in Jannah. You are my neighbor in paradise. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You see, when it came to this paradigm, if you want to get to Allah, Allah said, first serve your parents and through that you will get to a higher position. Now by the way, this needs to be reconciled with modern science and modern technology, and also what the Ahlul Bayt's akhlaq was. Rasulullah, we sometimes don't teach the adab and adab of how to deal with your children, and vice versa, how children should deal with their parents. There's a whole bab about this. At that time when Rasulullah came, as a man, you were supposed to be a very strong figure, and you never showed love or emotion. It was considered weak. When Rasulullah, when he used to go on the minbar, Imam Hassan and Hussein would come in the masjid and he would stop his khutbah. And he would actually have them come up on his lap or sit with him on the minbar. And Rasulullah would do something that nobody did before him in the Arabian belt, and that is, he would show affection to his children. He would kiss them and say, I love you. He would kiss them in front of everyone. The culture at that time was, you never, as a man, you never showed a love or affection to your children. Rasulullah is the leader of leaders, but he showed this. Why? Today, if you look at modern science, you can look at a course from Yale on parenting, and you'll find that if you want your child to listen to you, you give them positive reinforcement. Oftentimes, in culture, in society, people will say, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. But if the child does something good, we never say, MashaAllah, Subhanallah, very good, or we limit it. I'll give you an example. Dr. Martin Seligman, professor at University of Pennsylvania in the United States, one of the Ivy League schools. This may help someone here. He says, look, he said, I was tasked as the president of the American Psychological Association. When I won the presidency, I had to come up with a charter of what we're going to focus on. And he said that I was thinking I didn't get an answer. He said my daughter, who was 5 years old, she gave me an answer of what I needed to focus on. He said at that time, psychology was only focused on how do you get someone who is underwater emotionally and help them get up to the surface level. But it had no interest in helping someone go from surface level to the sky. So he was thinking about this, and his daughter helped him understand, who was 5 years old at the time. He said what was happening was, Dr. Seligman said that I was in the backyard with my daughter. And when we were in the backyard, we were pulling the weeds. You know, the grass or the flowers that you don't want, the things that you don't want, they were pulling the weeds. And so my daughter was, you know, children are children, children play. And so they're playing, and she was playing, and I got upset at her. Dr. Seligman says, as a psychologist, he says, I got upset and I said, we are here to rip out the weeds. We have something to do. Why are you not doing it? And this, maybe she was a psychologist's daughter, I don't know what it was, but it was interesting. He said, as soon as I said this, my daughter, she saw and she walked away. She calmed down and she came back. And I continued to do my work. She said, Dad, can I talk to you please? I said, yeah, sure, what do you want? He said, you remember 2 weeks ago, it was my birthday, my 5th birthday? I said, yes, I remember. He said, you remember you told me something on my 5th birthday? I said, yeah. What did I tell you? He said, yeah. You told me, Dad, that you whine a lot. You know, children, they make these whining noises and they say, why do I have to do this? Do I have to do this? He said, you whine too much. And so you said, you should stop doing this. I said, you said this? Dad? Yeah. I said that, I remember. He said, now he says that my daughter said, Dad, it's been 2 weeks since that day. Since that day, have you heard me whine or complain? And he said, you know, I have not heard you whine or complain even once in those 2 days. He said, okay then, Dad, if I can learn how to stop whining and complaining, you can start learning how to stop being so mean. And she walked away. He said, that gave me the lesson of a lifetime. Because I learned 3 things, he said. Number 1, I didn't realize that I was mean. You know, sometimes you don't even realize yourself that sometimes in your own house you're Pharaoh, but you don't realize it. And the same thing is true on the other side of the equation. So he said, look, number 1, I didn't realize I was like this. Sometimes you need someone to tell you, you know, you're not doing the right thing. Number 1. Number 2, he said that she helped me realize that I was only focused on the negative and stopping the negative. He said, I thought parenting was about don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, discipline, this. But I never stopped to appreciate my daughter for the good that she was doing. And he said, it's vital for parents to do that. And he said, number 3, I realized what we must focus on in the future of psychology, and that's this, positive psychology. All of psychology has been focused on trying to get people from negative emotions to 0 emotions, so that the negative emotions that they have of depression, anxiety, worry, they don't have them anymore. But no one's telling people, how do you flourish? This same model is how we have been teaching Islam to our next generations. We've been very good about saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, or you'll go to Jahannam and you'll be punished and this will happen. But no one says, what's the level beyond that? That your manzil is much higher and much further. As the poet Iqbal says, Sitaron se aage jahan aur bhi hai, abhi ishq ke imtihan aur bhi hai. This idea that you and I, is your job did Allah create you just to get a job and pay bills and die? La ilaha illallah. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, your value, do not sell yourself short. Do not sell yourself at a discount. Do not sell yourself for cheap. Your price is Jannah, paradise. Nothing less. But there are 2 ways to live in this dunya. You know, sometimes people say, this dunya has no value, this dunya is nothing, this dunya is nothing. Really. One aspect is the easy way. This world is nothing. So I won't do anything. There's another aspect of this dunya is nothing, and I want you to test your iman and see if you can trust Allah to do this side. It's more difficult. And that's this. Okay, if this world is nothing, then I will be a billionaire. Then I'll be a multi-billionaire. Then I will be the most famous person on the planet. And use that influence and wealth to do good for the world. Why? Because Allah has my back. Allah has my support. Allah is my guide. Who can stop me? That is true iman. That's the iman that Amir al-Mu'mineen had on the battlefield. And that's how he was successful every single time. That's what made Rasulullah. Rasulullah was supremely successful. So now come back to this, and parents, and my time's complete, but remember this. Respect for one's parents is vital, because without that, our world doesn't succeed. I'll recommend a book for you. It's called Difficult Conversations. And this will change your life, in the sense that there's always different perspectives. You know, a coin, you guys have coins here? You know, notes and coins and money and currency. There's always 3 sides to a coin. How many? 3 sides. Heads, tails, and the edge. And people forget the edge. What do I mean? Whenever there's a husband and wife discussing and talking, sometimes the husband says, my way is going to go. And sometimes the wife says, my way is going to go. There's 2 perspectives here. The husband's perspective and the wife's perspective. But there's a 3rd perspective. Allah's perspective. The 3rd perspective is the marriage's perspective. And if you come to that term, you can come to a realization that we need to do what is in the interest of our marriage and not my interest or your interest, because that will be bias. The same applies between father and son, father and daughter, mother and son, mother and daughter. The relationship, the perspective of the father and the son, and the relationship. Father says, I'm right. Son says, I'm right. Look at the scenario from the perspective of the relationship. What's in the better interest of us in terms of father and son dynamics? This is vital. Or mother and daughter dynamics. That's how you build love and compassion. The way the Ahlul Bayt operated. The way the Ahlul Bayt showed love, compassion for one another. There's much to say, I'll leave everything. But this is where this comes from. Good families, good parents, good love, good affection is what leads to the likes of Qasim ibn al-Hasan, the likes of Ali al-Akbar, the likes of Awn al-Muhammad, the likes of the Tiflan Muslim, the likes of those great individuals who were the children of the Ahlul Bayt. Those individuals, those personalities give us a sense of belonging. That even Imam Hussein is immortal. But also, the same principle applies to these individuals who are the children of these individuals. They are timeless. They are immortal. And it's important for us to remember that. Remember, if you are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, and you are young, and I see many young faces here, you are also on the path of Ali al-Akbar. You are on the path of Qasim. You are on the path of Awn al-Muhammad. And the way they went towards Kamal, I want you to go towards Kamal. Remember, Ahlul Bayt were the foremost in knowledge and ilm. They were the foremost and the front of the front in akhlaq and adab. They were the foremost in terms of leadership. They were the foremost in terms of their kalam. They were the foremost in every aspect and every dimension. But let me close here. The question I asked at the beginning is, does Allah give wahi, inspiration to anyone other than a prophet? And Allah answers this. Sometimes in the Quran, Allah says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى النَّحْلِ. Are we inspired the bee to make its hives in the mountains? Or sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives another answer. What? The scenario is, Musa is being born. When Musa is born, Fir'aun is killing the young newborn males in alternative years in order to make sure nobody comes to topple his empire. And Musa's mother has him in a basket. And Allah says in the Quran, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضَعِيهِ. We inspired the mother of Musa to release her son into the river. And so she was inspired and she released her son into the river. Allah said, I don't only give wahi to a nabi. I don't only give it to a prophet. I also give it to a mother. The mother of Musa. The maqam is exalted. Number one. Same principle. Ayatollah Sheikh Murtaza al-Ansari. Sheikh Murtaza al-Ansari is considered one of the greatest scholars of the last 150 years. When our Maraji, may Allah bless and protect all of them, when they write their risala, when they write their risala, you will find that the template that they use and the structure that they follow is the structure of Sheikh Murtaza al-Ansari. Sheikh Murtaza al-Ansari was from the lineage of Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. This great scholar, he was someone who used to travel. When he used to travel, today we have the internet and we have ChatGPT and the likes, and you can get answers on the fingertips. But before, you had to go from here to there to get ilm and knowledge. And so, he used to travel as a marja, he used to travel to Cairo, to Hilla, to Najaf, to Baghdad, to Kufa, to Isfahan, to every place in between to try to get knowledge. But he had a very strong relationship with his mother. And in this relationship with his mother, he would come back, he would go study and travel and get knowledge, and then he would come back and visit his mother for a few days. And when he would visit his mother for a few days, the same mother once said to him, "My son, do you have to go? Why don't you stay? I want you to stay with me." Now, this is a marja who has a responsibility, and we should be very mindful of this. One side, it's his mother, and he has to listen to what his mother said. On the other side, the scenario is such that he has a responsibility to the Shia community. And he's serving them. So what does he do? Does he listen to his mother, or does he go and obtain the knowledge that's needed for the community? So he said, "My mother, you have iman, you've given me iman, you give me belief. How about we do istikhara from the Quran?" We ask the Quran. She says, "Very well, my son." When she said this, he said, "My mother, you take the istikhara out, you read," because she had knowledge and ilm. He said, "Yes, my son, very well." She opened the Quran. The verse that came out was, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضَعِيهِ. We commanded and we inspired Musa's mother to release him to the river. She closed the Quran, she kissed it, she said, "My son, go in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." The principle is the alignment between the mother and the son. That is, when the mothers are like this, the children become like this. This is one scholar. But at the same time, and the father and the representative, Hussein gives rise to Ali Akbar. Hassan gives rise to Qasim. Zainab gives rise to Muhammad. Tonight, we turn our hearts and our minds to remember one individual who is a Shabbir, a replica from the Ahlul Bayt. The narrations say that Ali al-Akbar was so reminiscent of Rasulullah that we'll discuss in a few nights what Rasulullah's replica was. That Imam Hussein, on that day, that when Ali Akbar was going towards the battlefield, said, "Allahumma shahada ha'ula'il qawm, ala ha'ula'il qawm." That, "Oh Allah, bear witness on this nation, I'm sending to you the one who in khalqan wa khulqan wa mantaqa," in the way he walked, talked, and carried himself, he was the replica of Rasulullah. But he brought him to Karbala. They say that Abbas alayhi salam was the replica and the reminiscent replica of Ali alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And at that point in time, you'll find that the Banu Hashim children were a replica of their loved ones. All the replicas came along in the journey. All of those who were mushabih and the shabih of the Ahlul Bayt, they came. But there was one individual who was mushabih, who was a shabih, who Imam Hussein alayhi salam said that whatever may happen, I cannot take her to Karbala. Who is it? It is Fatima al-Sughra, Fatima al-Alila, Fatima the ill one. That the Zainab would even say, "My brother, you're not taking Fatima al-Sughra." Why? At that point in time, Azadaro kehte hain कि Imam Hussein ने कहा, "ऐ Zainab, ये Fatima सुगरा, ये इतनी मुशाबे है, और मुझे जब मैं देखता हूँ इस बेटी को तो मुझे अपनी माँ फातिमतुज़ ज़हरा याद आ जाती हैं। इतनी मुशाबे थी बीबी फातिमतुज़ सुगरा। अजब में शायद इमाम हुसैन की निगाह में बाज़ारे कूफा और शाम थे कि कहीं फातिमतुज़ ज़हरा पे जुल्म फिर से न हो, क्योंकि मदीना में दरो दीवार थे, आग थी, पसलियां टूटी हुई थी। कहीं आले मोहम्मद पर अब दोबारा ये जुल्म न हो जाए कि फातिमा सुगरा पर ये जुल्म हो जाए। अजरुकुम अल्लाह, अजरुकुम अल्लाह। فرصت دیجیے امام زمانہ کو. اور شاید یہ بھی ہو کہ کربلا میں اور عاشور کے دن امام حسین موجود ہوں اور کہیں امام حسین کی نگاہ فاطمہ صغریٰ پہ پڑ جاتی روز عاشورہ, اور عجب میں ایسا محسوس ہوتا کہ حسین کی ماں فاطمہ الزہرا وہ خود کربلا میں ہے اور یہ دیکھ رہی ہے ایک بیٹے کا دل ہے اور وہ بیٹا حسین ہے اور ماں فاطمہ ہے کہ کہیں ماں نہ دیکھ لے. اجرکم علی اللہ. مگر دبیر نے اپنے سلام میں کیا کہا کہ جب زینب کی ملاقات ہوتی ہے فاطمہ الزہرا سے تو دبیر سلام میں کہتے ہیں کہ زینب نے کہا اماں تم پر تو آفت سفر کربلا نہ تھی. پھر فاطمہ نے جواب دیا اے زینب یہ ماں کہاں نہ تھی, یہ ماں ہر موڑ پر کربلا میں تھی. فاطمہ دیکھ رہی تھی. فاطمہ اجرکم علی اللہ. یہی فاطمہ صغریٰ ہے جو مدینے میں ہے. یہی فاطمہ صغریٰ ہے جو علی اصغر کو ہاتھ میں لیے ہوئے ہیں اور چند ہفتے کے ہیں علی اصغر. اور پھر امام حسین نہ جانے کیا کہا, تاریخ نہیں لکھتی کہ امام نے علی اصغر کے کان میں کیا کہا, مگر وہ بچہ علی اصغر آ گئے اپنی بہن کو. گویا فاطمہ صغریٰ نے کہا ہوگا کہ اے اصغر تو نے بھی ساتھ چھوڑ دیا, سب مدینے سے چل بسے, قاسم و محمد, زینب اولیاء مقام, بابا حسین تو بھی چل بسا. فاطمہ صغریٰ اکیلے رہ گئی. اجرکم علی اللہ. دو جملے زحمت تمام کہتے ہیں کہ بی بی فاطمہ صغریٰ وہ واپس مدینے میں تھیں اور ام سلمہ ساتھ تھیں, اور ام سلمہ کے پاس کچھ خاک کربلا تھی جو رسول اللہ نے دی ہوئی تھی, اور ہمیشہ وہ پوچھتی تھی اے ام سلمہ اے نانی جان یہ بتائیے وہ خاک کا حال کیا ہے. تو دیکھتی تھی اور سوچتی تھی کیا ہے. عصر عاشور صغریٰ کو جواب ملا, وہ خاک لہو لہان ہو گیا. صغریٰ نے کہا انا للہ و انا الیہ راجعون. اجرکم علی اللہ. مگر ایک آخری بات جو رہ گئی, کہتے ہیں کہ صغریٰ نے خط لکھا, اور خط میں کیا لکھا, کہتے ہیں کہ بی بی مدینے میں باہر آ گئی اور راہ میں بیٹھ گئی اور پوچھتی جاتی تھی ارے کوئی عراق جانے والا ہے, کوئی میرا پیغام پہنچا دے, میرا بابا کہیں مہینوں سے گیا ہوا ہے. آخر ایک پیغام آیا, اس نے کہا کہ میں عراق کی جانب جا رہا ہوں, اور اس نے خط دیا. خط میں صغریٰ نے اپنا زبان حال بیان کیا. اجرکم علی اللہ. زحمت تمام. وہ خط خدا جانے کیسے کربلا پہنچا. جب پہنچا تو کہتے عصر عاشور ہوئی, امام حسین اکیلے تھے, عباس مارے گئے, قاسم مارے گئے, سب شہداء مارے گئے. امام حسین کو پیغام کا خط ملا صغریٰ کا, اور خط میں کیا دیکھتے ہیں, صغریٰ نے پوچھا ہوگا اے بابا میرا چھوٹا بھائی علی اصغر وہ کیسے ہے, بابا آپ کیسے ہیں, بابا چچا عباس کیسے ہیں, او بابا میرا بھائی علی اکبر وہ کیسے ہے. न कहा, खत को लिया, कुछ कदम आगे बढ़े, लाशे अली अकबर नजर आई। खत को लिया, अली अकबर के सीने पे रखा, कहा बेटा अली अकबर, बहन का खत आया। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि या रसूल, सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि या अमीरुल मुमिनीन, सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि या फातिमतुज़ ज़हरा सय्यदत निसाइल आलमीन, सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि या हसनल मुज्तबा, अस्सलामु अलल हुसैन وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. معتم الحسين أوصي